All right, so moving on to today's sermon, I'm going to be talking about Psalm 35. Psalm 35 falls under a category known as imprecatory. It's an imprecatory psalm. Imprecatory means a prayer where you ask God to bring justice and vindication against our enemies here and now. Not just enemies like they just kind of hurt your feelings a little bit, but actual enemies who are evil in their hearts, who devise schemes to hurt you or to hurt your family or to hurt the church or to hurt our communities. And so there's a sense of urgency in imprecatory prayers. Like, God, we need your rescue now. So bring justice and judgment soon, lest these enemies triumph over us. Now, there are maybe a dozen or so psalms that fall under this category called imprecatory, and Psalm 35 is one of those. Some believe that the imprecatory psalms increase in intensity the further into the psalms you get. So the first imprecatory psalm was Psalm 7, and that one would be considered a minor imprecatory psalm. And then it gets increasingly more intense until you get to Psalm 109, where there's 30 requests in that psalm for God's judgment to occur. So Psalm 35 is considered imprecatory because it contains requests for God to reveal his justice here and now. To not wait for the final judgment later on Judgment Day, but to bring relief and rescue today, to expedite justice. So something we remember as we study this psalm is that God is merciful. He is just. He is loving. He is holy. He is compassionate. He is our Father, our protector, our guide, our redeemer, our strength. He is completely 100% sovereign, and he is all-powerful and displays all of these attributes at all times. So just as we can call upon God to be our loving Father and to forgive us, we can call upon him as judge of the earth to render justice and judgment for us or for others. So the Psalms are prayers and songs to God, and they serve us not only in that they are the Word of God and therefore sanctify us in the truth of it, but that they also show us what righteous prayers are like. Psalm 35 is an example of approaching God in prayer as one who comes into a courtroom where God is judge and you are the plaintiff seeking justice. There are, of course, prayers where we are like children approaching a father. There are prayers where we are hurting and we're approaching God as our comforter. There are prayers where we are sick, injured, in pain, infirm, and weak, where we are approaching the great physician, the healer, the source of strength. There are prayers where we are poor and needy, and we're asking God to provide. There are prayers where we are sinful and wretched, where we're approaching the merciful and compassionate one who is slow to anger and rich in steadfast love. And today's psalm comes from the perspective of one who is experiencing injustices in the world and personally experiencing these injustices against himself by these enemies, by these wicked ones. And so he's approaching the judge of all the earth, the holy and righteous one who sees all and knows all. He's approaching the lawgiver, the one who can rightly decide disputes and render a good and just judgment. Okay, so today there's a handout the Psalm 35 handout. It's two-sided. I should have enough for all the adults to have one. But Ella has a stack of them. If you don't have a handout, please raise your hand. And she's going to go hand them out now. And keep your hands raised until you've got one, okay? Because I'm not putting anything up on the screen today. I'm just going to be using the handouts. And keep those hands raised until you've got one. In this handout, I highlighted Psalm 35 into different colors. Those colors are color-coded to represent 4 different categories of the psalm. So on one side of the handout is the psalm itself, and on the other side of the handout is the legend that explains what each color represents. All right, so I want you to imagine Psalm 35 as David entering a courtroom as a plaintiff. So just imagine that scene as I read through this psalm. Contend, O Lord, with those who contend with me. Fight against those who fight against me. Take hold of shield and buckler and rise for my help. Draw the spear and javelin against my pursuers. Say to my soul, I am your salvation. Let them be put to shame and dishonor who seek after my life. Let them be turned back and disappointed who devise evil against me. Let them be like chaff before the wind, with the angel of the Lord driving them away. Let their way be dark and slippery, with the angel of the Lord pursuing them. For without cause they hid their net for me. Without cause they dug a pit for my life. Let destruction come upon him when he does not know it, and let the net that he hid ensnare him. Let him follow into it, to his destruction. Then my soul will rejoice in the Lord, exulting in his salvation. All my bones shall say, O Lord, who is like you, delivering the poor from him who is too strong for him, the poor and needy from him who robs him. Malicious witnesses rise up. They ask me of things that I do not know. They repay me evil for good. My soul is bereft. But I, when they were sick, I wore sackcloth. I afflicted myself with fasting. I prayed with head bowed on my chest. I went about as though I grieved for my friend or my brother. As one who laments his mother, I bowed down in mourning. But at my stumbling, they rejoiced and gathered. They gathered together against me. Wretches whom I did not know tore at me without ceasing. Like profane mockers at a feast, they gnash at me with their teeth. How long, O Lord, will you look on? Rescue me from their destruction, my precious life from the lions. I will thank you in the great congregation. In the mighty throng, I will praise you. Let not those rejoice over me who are wrongfully my foes. And let not those wink the eye who hate me without cause. For they do not speak peace, but against those who are quiet in the land, they devise words of deceit. They open wide their mouths against me. They say, Aha, aha, our eyes have seen it. You have seen, O Lord. Be not silent. O Lord, be not far from me. Awake and rouse yourself for my vindication, for my cause, my God and my Lord. Vindicate me, O Lord, my God, according to your righteousness. And let them not rejoice over me. Let them not say in their hearts, Aha, our heart's desire. Let them not say, We have swallowed him up. Let them be put to shame and disappointed altogether who rejoice at my calamity. Let them be clothed with shame and dishonor who magnify themselves against me. Let those who delight in my righteousness shout for joy and be glad and say evermore, Great is the Lord who delights in the welfare of his servant. Then my tongue shall tell of your righteousness and of your praise all the day long. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, so looking at the color coding on your handout, you're going to see that I broke up Psalm 35 into 4 different categories represented by different colors there. That first portion is the red portion. This is a courtroom plea for justice and rescue by a persecuted saint, David, to a just judge, Yahweh, unto a righteous end, the magnification of the Lord. So in this red portion, you're going to see these are his summary judgment requests. When you go to court as a plaintiff, you express to the judge your overall complaint and demand for restitution. You have a summary request. Now, David's overall request in Psalm 35 is, God, fight for me. Defend and save me, because I am unjustly persecuted by people who have it out for me. I don't deserve what they're trying to dish out. So please step in and act. Rouse, rise, reassure, rescue, and referee. If you take all those R words and look at your red text in the psalm, you're going to see all of those aspects in there, where he's asking God to stand up, fight for me. He's asking God to reassure him. In verse 3, he says, tell me that I am your salvation. Tell that to me. Give me those words. He's asking for rescue. He's asking God to referee the situation. God, vindicate me according to your righteousness. You see all. You know what is good, what is bad, and you can make a decision here. The purple text are his statements. David is listing out the facts of the case. He expounds his complaint, the harm that his enemies have caused, as well as his own innocence. When you go to court as a plaintiff, you have to state what injustices you suffered, what contracts were broken, or in what ways you were harmed, what harm you incurred. So the underlined portions in this Psalm 35 text show that David's enemies were pursuing and harassing him without cause, under false pretenses, with false accusations. They were malicious witnesses, making up false things about David, producing false evidence and testimony. In defense, David promotes his own behaviors toward them and compares himself against their behavior toward him. So if you remember in verse, I think it's 11 through 14 especially, he says, they repay me evil for good. When they were sick, I fasted for them. I prayed for them. I was there for them. But when the cards are reversed, they are rejoicing over my calamity. So he's declaring his own innocence and their unjust behaviors against him. In verse 22, David calls upon the Lord not to just be the judge, but also a key witness. He says, you have seen, O Lord. And he says this right after speaking about how David's enemies claim to have seen certain things about David in verse 21. In verse 21, they say, aha, aha, our eyes have seen it. Right after he says, but you have seen, O Lord. In every courtroom case, you have to have testimony. You have to have evidence to substantiate your claims. And David feels like he's being piled up on by false testimony And there's no escape from it. Because if you were going to be condemned by false witnesses, in what way can you be exonerated? You would only be able to be exonerated if there was a slam dunk defense, a way that contravenes all of their false testimonies. The Lord sees all. And so he calls upon the Lord to say, you have seen, O Lord. Be not silent. Meaning, speak up. Be my testifier. Be my advocate in this situation. The third point here is that there are supplications. David itemizes more specifically what would be the restitution unto his enemies and the vindication that clears his name. So when you go to court as a plaintiff, you may itemize the specifics of what would make things right for you. For example, if your neighbor's dog dug a hole under your fence and into your yard and chewed through part of your wood fence, you may request specific parts of your yard and fence to be restored to original condition, and request certain measures be enforced to prevent the dog from continuing to harm the property, such as restraints or additional barriers on the fence and underground. And so David is asking, God, don't just make things right. Put a stop to it. Make my enemies stopped. Prevent them from harassing me further. If you look at the green text of Psalm 35, you have this constant let language. Let them be put to shame and dishonor. So part of the restitution that he seeks is for his enemies to be shamed and dishonored by their actions. Part of civil court is that you seek poor behaviors to be shut down, right? It's to stop the mouths of fools and of the wicked. To deter evil is one of the uses of the law. There should be a sense of shame, right? If you've done wrong, there should be a healthy sense of shame, even public shame. If there was a nuisance in the community who was just going around stealing from people and getting away with it, breaking into people's garages and taking things, you would want there to be shame and dishonor for that person. And so David asks, as part of his restitution, bring shame to this. We don't want wicked behavior to be going about like it's normal. This needs to be part of our prayers to God. Lord, we are seeing all kinds of injustices going on, and people are treating it like it's normal, and it's not. God, would you put them to shame and dishonor? He also says in verse 4, let them be turned back and disappointed. So another aspect of defeat of wickedness is that their plans are foiled, that there is disheartening taking place. When you see people, when wicked people get away with something, and then they get away with it again, and then they get away with it again, next thing you know, there's a confidence being built up in wickedness. But, conversely, if wickedness were stopped, and there was you've heard the phrase, nip it in the bud, means you don't let it fruit, you don't let it become spreadable. If you nip it in the bud, that's what he's asking for here. God, would you nip it in the bud? Let them be turned back and disappointed. The third thing he asks for is he asks for shame, he asks for foiling of their plans, but he also says in verses 5 and 6, Let them be like chaff before the wind, with the angel of the Lord driving them away. Let their way be dark and slippery, with the angel of the Lord pursuing them. Now, if you pay attention to verse 3, he says, draw the spear and javelin against my pursuers. And now in verses 5 and 6, he's saying, this angel of the Lord, he's calling upon to pursue them. You better believe if there was a malicious actor going after my children, if they were pursuing my children, well, they themselves, that malicious actor would be pursued by me, right? I'm going to pursue the pursuers. That's what he's saying. God, would you just do an Uno reverse on the wicked? Here they are pursuing me, and I'm running away. David, if you remember, has he has an unjust attacker, Saul, coming after him. And he says, all I've ever done was serve Saul. All I ever did was obey and do my best to serve the kingdom. And now I'm being unjustly pursued. And so he's asking for God to drive the wicked away and to make them poof. Make them like chaff before the wind. He also says in verse 8, let destruction come upon him. Let the net that he hid ensnare him. Let him fall into it. These three lets, he is conveying, God, these people are devising all kinds of schemes. Let those schemes themselves be their own ruin. We live in a society that is consumed with death and sexual perversions and other things. And we know that a society that focuses on this type of thing will crumble under its own weight of sin. It's self-destructive, right? And so he is, in a sense, saying, God, if they are seeking after me so hard, let them fall by their own measures. These are difficult things to pray, because as I've said before in our sermons about imprecatory praying, you yourself have to be in right standing to say this. You yourself must be seeking forgiveness, because how can you pray for the destruction of the wicked? You might be praying coals upon your own head, right? You yourself are acting unjustly towards your neighbor. If you say, God, please let the unjust ones destroy themselves, you might be praying upon your own head that judgment. And so he goes on to say in here, to let vindication play out. God, you be the judge. Let the right thing take place. Just make things right. That is ultimately what our prayers should be when they fall under this category. God, make things right. Which would mean our own hearts. God, straighten my path. If there's any sin in me, cleanse me of it. So the green part were supplications, these itemized restitution requests. And in the later part, he says in verses 25 through 27, let them not say in their hearts, aha, our heart's desire. Let them not say, we have swallowed them up. Let them be put to shame and disappointed altogether who rejoice at my calamity. Let them be clothed with shame and dishonor who magnify themselves against me. So a reiteration of what was said earlier. But verse 27 says, let those who delight in my righteousness shout for joy and be glad and say evermore, great is the Lord who delights in the welfare of his servant. So the prayer is twofold. God, don't let the wicked rejoice over me in their victory, but rather let the righteous rejoice over me in my victory, in my vindication that comes through you. This fourth part, the blue section, are descriptive of the salvation and the speaking out because of the salvation, the spreading and magnifying of God's name. David was certain of his innocence before the Lord and confident that God is righteous, a righteous judge. And therefore he expects to be delivered, rescued, and saved. And therefore declares to God that David's vindication will result in the Lord's magnification. When you go to court as a plaintiff, you don't go half-heartedly or as a guilty party. Right? You go because you are the one who's been wronged by the other, and therefore seek justice and vindication. If someone objectively harms you, you could take that person to court with confidence that you were in the right and the other was in the wrong. In Psalm 35, David expected vindication, and being confident of a pending victory of vindication, he stands ready to spread the praises of the Lord and to speak out amongst the congregation about God's goodness and righteousness. He even includes in his prayer that others will witness this vindication and join in the magnification of the Lord. This magnification of the Lord will be with David's whole heart, soul, mind, and strength. It will be unashamedly public, and it will be verbal and continuous. So, looking at Psalm 35 on the blue sections, he says, "Then my soul will rejoice in the Lord, exulting in his salvation. All my bones shall say, O Lord, who is like you?" So, all my soul and all my bones, right? This is connected to our command to love the Lord our God with our heart, soul, mind, and strength. David is saying, my whole being will give you praise when you give me the victory. In verse 18, he says, I will thank you in the great congregation. In the mighty throng, I will praise you. I got to experience some of this just a few days ago at the Heritage Days. I'm in the mighty throng, I'm in the great congregation, and I get to praise the Lord from the stage and tell of God's goodness. That's what David is saying. Look, rescue of me results in your greatness being proclaimed. Verse 28 says, Then my tongue shall tell of your righteousness and of your praise all the day long. Okay? So the first blue section talked about his whole being. The middle section talks about the outward to everyone that he sees. And then in the last part, he talks about the timing extension. All the time. My whole being to all people all the time. We emphasized this magnification of the Lord's name earlier in Psalm 34, and how this is a key calling for us. This is why we were created, to glorify God and to enjoy him forever, to put him in the spotlight, to make much of him. If you look at verse, let's see, talk about them magnifying themselves against him, against David. And so Yeah, I can't find it right now for some reason. Oh yeah, verse 26. There we go. Second half. He says, "Let them be clothed in shame and dishonor, who magnify themselves against me." So think of it this way. Lord, if you don't do anything, all the glory goes to them. They are making much of themselves. They are putting themselves on the pedestal. Idolatry and evil is on the rise, so to speak. But God, we want you to be on the rise. We want you to be high and lifted up. And this is, Psalm 35 is a longer version, a more detailed version of what we pray in the Lord's Prayer. Hallowed be thy name. And we also pray, deliver us from evil. Right? This is a deliver me from evil prayer. And these are prayers that we should be well-rounded in our praying, right? We're not going to pray imprecatory psalms all day, every day, because we ourselves need to be praying for God's mercy to ourselves. We need to be praying for changed hearts. We need to be praying for the growth of the gospel, for the growth of the church. We need to be praying for the needs of specific saints. There's so many things we should be praying for. God, give us this day our daily bread is not an imprecatory praying. But it relates because in God's mercy to his beloved, the giving of daily bread, the delivering them out of temptation and evil includes these types of things. Being merciful to his saints includes delivering them out of evil. So it is okay to pray for God's justice to be expedited. God, tear down the abortion clinics. God, tear down these walls of wickedness that are being built up around us. They are magnifying themselves against us. God, would you be our rescuer, our redeemer? Rise up. Promote goodness and justice in our land so that we would live a peaceable and quiet life. This is taught in the New Testament. Pray for the kings among you so that you could live a peaceful and quiet